So this is the Legendary Dragon deck set. This is the third Legendary deck set with the same format containing 3 decks, each based on a character from the anime. Unlike the last 3 sets, these characters use dragons, hence the name Legendary Dragon decks. Surprisingly, they gave Yugi a slot and not the Legendary Dragon user Kaiba or Joey, but we probably don't need any more Blue Eyes or Red Eyes reprints running around, even though I'd love some more alternative dragons flying around out there.
Let's start with Yugi's deck, the Legendary Dragon deck.
A little confusing since these are all Legendary Dragon decks because the set they come in is called Legendary Dragon decks, but this deck is actually based on the Legendary Dragon / Knight archetype, so there are obvious reprints like the 3 spells Eye of Timaeus, Fang of Critias, and Claw of Hermos. You also get their Knight forms and Legend of Heart. Then you get a bunch of fusions to make with the dragon spells: Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, Dark Paladin, Amulet Dragon, Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight, Doom Virus Dragon, Tyrant Burst Dragon, Mirror Force Dragon, Time Magic Hammer, Rocket Hermos Cannon, Goddess Bow, and Red Eyes Black Dragon Sword. Up until this set, I did not know you could actually summon Dark Paladin with Eye of Timaeus. Also, the inclusion of Red Eyes Black Dragon Sword perplexed me since I didn't see any dragon targets in the main deck, but then I realized you can make it with one of the dragon fusions. Dark Magician the Dragon Knight is actually a new card introduced in this set. It is the Dark Magician version of Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight. Oddly enough, the Dark Magician riding on Timaeus is not Dark Magician Knight, which is what I thought it would be when I first heard of this card. This is actually a really strong card and a reason you might want to run 3 Eye of Timaeus in your Dark Magician deck. Its effect reads: this card's name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or in your graveyard. Your opponent cannot target spells or traps you control with card effects. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. That is a very powerful effect that can protect your floodgates or your set cards to really give your opponents a hard time. More importantly, it works a lot with the Dark Magician support cards because they are continuous effects and because Dark Magicians really rely on setting cards the turn before. When you combine this with another card in this deck, you can really make your opponent sweat. Which brings us to the next part of the set, and probably the main reason you bought it is the Dark Magician support. This deck comes with tons of Dark Magician support, as well as a lot of long-awaited reprints. 3 copies of Dark Magician, giving us the 24th printing of this card. 1 copy of Dark Magician Girl. Unfortunately, only 1 copy of Apprentice Illusion Magician. This was a Shonen Jump exclusive card, so it was really hard to get. You should run 3 in your Dark Magician deck, so it would have been cool if they gave us more copies of this card, but this reprint is much appreciated. 2 copies of Magician's Robe for whatever reason. They decided to give us 2, even though you should probably run 0. 2 copies of Magician's Rod. This is a great search card for Dark Magician, and it's a good thing they give you 2, and that's actually probably why they give you 2 robes so you can match. 3 copies of Skilled Dark Magician, another card you shouldn't be running in 2017. 1 copy of Dark Magical Circle. This is a much welcomed reprint even though we just got one in the Mega Pack. You really need this for a Dark Magician deck. 1 copy of Illusion Magician, 1 copy of Dark Magic Expanded, 1 copy of Dark Magic Inheritance, 1 copy of Thousand Knives, 1 copy of Dark Magic Attack, 1 copy of Eternal Soul. Just like Dark Magical Circle, this is a much welcomed reprint. It really helps the Dark Magician decks, and this is the card I was talking about when I mentioned Dark Magician the Dragon Knight. You see, Eternal Soul's effect reads: every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. This is some powerful protection. The trade-off is, if this card leaves the field, destroy all monsters you control. So if you combine this with the effects of Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, you can protect Eternal Soul, and Eternal Soul can protect Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, giving yourself a very powerful board for your opponent to out. 1 copy of Magician's Navigation. This is another card I wish they gave us 3 of, but this card isn't too hard to get, so it's not a big deal. Finally, 1 copy of Dark Renewal to round out our Dark Magician support. In addition to the Legendary Dragons, they give you some one-off cards. 1 copy of Breaker the Magical Warrior, 1 copy of Magical Exemplar, 1 copy of Big Shield Gardna, a warrior target for your warrior fusion, 2 copies of Absolute Crusader. I don't really know why, maybe he has some kind of a significance in the anime. It's also another warrior target. 1 copy of Swords of Revealing Light, a classic Yugi card, 1 copy of Pot of Duality, 1 copy of Rota, 1 copy of Crush Guard Virus for Critias, 1 copy of Mirror Force for Critias, and finally 1 copy of Tyrant Wings, again for Critias. All in all, the Legendary Dragon deck is all over the place, but this is to be expected because they really want you to be able to play all the dragon spells and fusions. Since they are so different from one another, they don't exactly synergize too well, and surprisingly they didn't include a copy of the fusion of all 3 of the knights. The second deck is Zane's Cyber Dragon deck. This is a lot more cohesive since they focus on one archetype only, the Cyber Dragons. Let's go through the main deck. There are 3 copies of Cyber Dragon. This is the 20th printing of the card in the TCG, in case you were wondering. 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Zwei, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Dre, 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core, 1 copy of Proto Cyber Dragon, 2 copies of Cyber Valley, 2 copies of Cyber Phoenix, 1 copy of Cyber Dinosaur, 2 copies of Cyber Eltanin, 1 copy of Armored Cybern, 1 copy of Mahina Fortress, 3 copies of Cyber Repair Plant, one of which is a fantastic foil reprint, 3 copies of Evolution Burst, 2 copies of Power Bond, 2 copies of Overload Fusion, 1 copy of Future Fusion, 1 copy of Limiter Removal, 1 copy of Machina Armored Unit, 2 copies of Cyber Network, one of which is a questionable foil reprint, 1 copy of Cyber Shadow Gardena, and finally 3 different kinds of Mirror Force. Getting into the extra deck, we have 1 copy of Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon, 1 copy of Cyber End Dragon, 2 copies of Cyber Twin Dragon, 1 copy of Chimera Tech Over Dragon, 1 copy of Chimera Fortress Dragon, 2 copies of Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nova, and 1 copy of Cyber Dragon Infinity. I don't have a whole lot of experience playing Cyber Dragons, but from what I know, it's an OTK deck, but I like to play it as a Cyber Dragon Infinity Turbo deck. The deck in the set is obviously built around OTKing with the fusion. Important cards like Cyber Dragon Core, Cyber Dragon Repair Plant, and Evolution Burst come in 3s. Evolution Burst isn't really a card you'd run if you had staples, but it's in theme spot removal for the deck, so they had to include it. Cards that come in 2s are okay for the in-theme stuff. Valley gives you some draw power, removal, and protection. Phoenix gives you some protection and draw power. Dre can get you an instant infinity. Zwei doesn't really seem very good at all it does is change its name to Cyber Dragon. Probably only at 2 to match Dre. Eltanin is a very nice tech card that can deal with some problem cards, but I don't think you really need to run 2 of it. Power Bond is a card I wish came in 3s. I love this card a lot. Cyber Network is really bad and it should not have gotten the foil treatment. That should have been something like Cyber End Dragon or even Cyber Dragon Nova for that matter. I think the most important card to talk about is the new fusion. Chimera Tech Mega Fleet Dragon is a new and upgraded form for Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Like Fortress Dragon, you can make this card using your opponent's monsters. Unlike Fortress Dragon, your opponent doesn't need to have a machine type monster. The trade-off is you can only use monsters in the extra deck zones, so you can only get up to 2 materials from your opponent to play this card. At first, I thought it was a pretty decent card because it can actually help you out some cards that are really problematic on the field that you couldn't normally get around, but we already have kaijus which are better for monster removal and they don't require you to do as much. You can just summon your kaiju and your opponent has to deal with it. Whereas with this, if they negate the summon of your Cyber Dragon or if they play like Book of Moon or something, you can't really do anything. While it's certainly an interesting card, it's not really needed for the deck. It really doesn't help out the deck that much. Unfortunately, this deck does not come with Machine Duplication, which would have been a great boost to help you turbo out Cyber Dragon Infinity. I would have taken Machine Duplication over some of the mediocre cyber monsters any day. The final deck is the Dimensional Dragon deck, inspired by Yuya, and to be completely honest, I don't really know how this deck functions, nor do I have any real attachment to any of these cards. I know it's a little all over the place because of the anime, but I don't really think you would play all these cards together. 1 copy of Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon, 2 copies of Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, one of which is a really cool ultra rare, 1 copy of Supreme King Dragon Odd Eyes, 2 copies of Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon. This is a pretty welcomed reprint since the original card was kinda pricey. 2 copies of Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, another welcomed reprint since this is also a pricey card. 2 copies of Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon, 1 copy of Performapal Odd Eyes Light Phoenix, 2 copies of Performapal Odd Eyes Unicorn, 2 copies of Performapal Skrull Crobat Joker, Performapal Rain Goat, 2 copies of Performapal Yugo Golem, 2 copies of Noble Dragon Magician, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon, 2 copies of Sky Iris, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Fusion, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Advent, 2 copies of Spiral Flame Strike. I think this was a pretty pricey card. It's kind of up there. It's a good thing we got a reprint of it though. 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. I know this is a sought after card. It's kind of pricey. It's a good thing we get 2 of them in the set. 2 copies of Pendulum Impenetrable. 2 copies of Pendulum Storm. 1 copy of Pot of Riches, 2 copies of Terraforming. Always good to have more Terraformings because field spells are very strong right now. 1 copy of Echo Oscillation, 2 copies of Pendulum Reborn, and finally 2 copies of Pendulum Switch to round out the main deck. You get 1 copy of Starring Venom Fusion Dragon, of course the alternate art, 1 copy of Supreme King Dragon Starring Venom, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, 1 copy of Performapal Gatling Ghoul, 1 copy of Clearwing Synchro Dragon, my favorite Synchro card ever, 1 copy of Supreme King Dragon Clearwing, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, 1 copy of Dark Rebellion XZ's Dragon, 1 copy of Supreme King Dark Dragon Rebellion. I said that name wrong. 1 copy of Supreme King Dark Dragon Rebellion. That's still not right. And finally, 1 copy of Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon. Again, I don't really know much about these Pendulum Magician cards. I assume there are some good reprints. I looked up some of the prices of the original cards and they were like 10 to 15 and sometimes even $20 online. So seeing them as reprint commons must be great for you guys who want to play Pendulum Magicians. Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon is the brand new card in this set, and it seems pretty good if you pair it with a card like Performapal Pendulum Sorcerer, which unfortunately does not come with the deck. Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon's effect reads, if an Odd Eyes card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. That's its pendulum effect, otherwise it's a vanilla. Some cards you can use to trigger this effect are Supreme King Dragon Odd Eyes, Performapal Odd Eyes Light Phoenix, Sky Iris, which is probably the most likely way you'll get it off, and finally Spiral Flame Strike if you really wanted to do that. One really cool thing about this deck is that they bring you the alternate arts of the Dimension Dragons. Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon, Dark Rebellion Dragon, Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and Starring Venom Fusion Dragon all come with their new artwork. This artwork is based off the Dimensional Box artwork. For those of you who don't know, the Dimensional Box was a special set in the OCG that came with cards based on the main characters from Arc 5 or Arc V. It's nice to see some more of these Dimensional Box exclusives making their way to the TCG, and hopefully we'll see Patchwork next. That's all for today's video, and if you enjoyed the video, please tell us in the comment section. Also, tell us what you guys think of the set and which is your favorite deck out of the 3. Personally, mine is the Legendary Dragon deck. And as always, thanks for watching.